All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of D&D Deep Dive, the show where we dive deep into classes, subclasses, and other features of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons to help you get the most out of your choices. So, today, we're going to be continuing on the Matt Mercer series. If you haven't watched my last few deep dives, I've been focusing on the subclasses that Matt Mercer himself has designed. And after covering the two that were on did a D&D Beyond that were released recently on D&D Beyond, the Oath of the Open Sea, I want to call it. It was a paladin oath that Seath the theme for Ford in the second campaign of Critical Role, and then the Way of the Cobalt Soul monk. I decided to go back and actually cover some of the subclasses that people may not have been familiar with because they only show up in this, the Tal'Dorei campaign setting. Because this was published by Green Ronin, none of these, other than the Cobalt Soul Monk, actually show up on D&D Beyond. The reason the Cobalt Soul is on there is because Marisha Ray plays Bo, who is a Cobalt Soul monk, and they use D&D Beyond exclusively for their character sheet, so they had to have that on there, I'm assuming. I have no idea what the licensing conversations were about or what they evolved. So I sincerely doubt you'll be seeing these officially, the rest of these officially on D&D Beyond. But I figured we still could cover them because they're still really interesting and really unique. So we've actually covered all but one of the Tal'Dorei campaign settings subclasses. There were 4 introduced in there. And the last one we're going to cover today is the Path of the Juggernauts. This one, I haven't talked a lot about the kind of lore behind them and the inspiration that kind of created most of these. This one I really like simply because the lore behind it influences the choices so much that it's kind of hard to talk about the class without mentioning the lore. So the Path of the Juggernaut is actually based on the character Kevdak from the first campaign. Kevdak was the leader of the Herd of Storms, which is where Grog, Travis Willingham's Barbarian that he played, that's where he was born and eventually was kicked out after almost dying from the Herd of Storms beating him. Really positive backstory. Kevdak was the leader of the Herd of Storms, and slight, this is spoiler alert, eventually Grog has to battle him later in the story. And I won't tell you how the battle turns out, but it was epic. And so the Path of the Juggernaut Barbarian is very much kind of related to this idea of a character that is nigh unstoppable. If you're familiar with other uses of the term Juggernaut, this is a barbarian that just gets going and starts attacking and destroying things almost indiscriminately. So let's dive into the class itself. Before we actually, the subclass, before we dive into the feature of the subclass, just like every other one, we kind of talk about 5e class design because it really will influence what we look at in these subclass. In 5e, every class should play very different from the other ones, and the things that make them play different, the things I call their unique features, should show up within the first 2 levels. For Barbarian, the unique features, really the most defining unique feature is Rage. It is the absolute first thing you get at level 1. It's the first thing listed under equipment. Rage is a barbarian thing, and it's a barbarian thing since they were introduced, I believe, in advanced second edition is where they first started showing up, and I believe they originally were a kit for, it might have been a kit for the Ranger, because Minx is one of the first Barbarians showed up, and in the original Baldur's Gate, he was actually a Ranger. And he eventually was turned into a Barbarian. But they might have been their own class. I can't actually remember. But Rage is a defining feature of the Barbarian. It does a number of things. Its base aspects is it gives you advantage on strength checks and saving throws while you're raging. You have resistance to basically weapon damage, but bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. Though if a spell does that, you'll still have resistance to it. And any strength-based attacks you make get a bonus to their damage rolls. And that bonus gets higher and higher as you gain more levels in Barbarian. So the kind of unique defining features of the Barbarian is that Rage, and it really encapsulates really everything else that you see in the Barbarian. They're designed to dish out a lot of damage. That is their kind of main thing, is they go in and they break stuff and they destroy enemies. In order to help them to do that, they get a thing called Reckless Attack, which allows them to just get advantage on all their attack rolls till the end of their turn, but it also gives enemies advantage against them, which is the other half of the Barbarian. They're designed to take hits. They're not designed to be tanky. They're designed to take hits. And the reason I make that distinction is a paladin is designed to be tanky. It's designed to be able to withstand blows. They get very high armor classes. If you play a very traditional paladin, where you're kind of sword and board and plate armor, you'll have one of the highest ACs in the game. And you will have extra spells and things like that that can make it higher, that can make you harder to hit, and you can heal yourself. That is what I consider a tanky kind of character. Barbarians are not designed to be tanky. They're designed to take hits. Reckless Attack gives the enemies a reason to attack the Barbarian over other characters on the field. At first level, Reckless Attack they get at second level. First level they get unarmored defense, which means they don't have to wear armor in order to not get hit by absolutely everything. And their armor is actually based on their dex mod and their constitution modifier, which constitution is a huge thing for barbarians. But Reckless Attack makes it advantageous for enemies to attack them. And Rage, with their resistance to damage built in, makes it for them to take hits. So those are kind of the two things that really define the Barbarian. Is they're designed to do a lot of damage, and Rage helps with that. And they're designed to take a lot of damage, and Rage helps with that as well. To the point where the stuff that they don't have resistance again in their Rage, things like spells like Fireball and stuff like that, they actually get Danger Sense at the second level, which basically gives them advantage on dex saves against effects that you can see. So they're harder to hit with like fireballs and that. Things that would go around their rage defense. So that's what barbarians are designed to do. Everything in the subclass should somehow enhance those aspects of being a barbarian. So let's dive into the actual path of Juggernaut. So right when you get the subclass at level 3, you get to two different things. The first thing you get is Thunderous Blows. And this, again, I'm a huge fan of what I call the controlling style in the battlefield. Thunderous Blows effectively means when you hit someone once on your turn while raging, so this improves their rage abilities. When you damage a creature with a melee attack, you can force a target to make a strength save, and their DC is based on their strength mod, so strength is a huge thing for barbarians. Strength and con are the two biggest things for barbarians. On a failure, you can push the target 5 feet away from you, and you can choose to immediately move 5 feet into the target's previous position. So, this allows the barbarian to move people around the field. Now, because it can only happen once per turn, you are limited to 5 feet per turn. But that 5 feet can be really effective if used at the right time. There are certain situations, like if you're fighting in a building, you can bottleneck enemies if you can get something in the way of the door. And something I've seen a lot of DMs do, and I've seen players do this too, it's a really common tactic, is to prevent your party from getting bottlenecked inside a room where they can the enemy can just take pot shots at them. You will have one of your allies either stand in the doorway or just in front, because you can move through your allies' space freely. Whereas if an enemy's there, you can't move through that space unless you kill them or move them. With a barbarian, which again is designed to take hits, if the enemy has done that, where they've kind of barricaded the door so that they can keep getting people in, and you can shoot through your allies' spaces where you can't generally do it through enemies' spaces. So if they're stopping your party from getting out, or if they're just allowing all of their allies in the room out to fight you guys, the barbarian can just push them in and then just stay there and take all the hits, because that's what they're built to do, while the rest of your allies take pot shots and keep you alive and stuff like that. So that's always useful. If there's any cliff or any thing like that, again, because barbarians get advantage on strength checks while they're raging, grappling is a really useful thing to do as a barbarian, especially since at 5th level you start getting increases to your movement speed. So combining Thunderous Blows with like a grapple, the way that a grapple works is if you take the attack action and you have multiple attacks, you can actually replace one of those attacks with a grapple. So in this particular instance, what could happen is you could go up, take the attack action, but use your first attack to grapple the target. You'll have advantage on the grapple check, and it's a strength-based check. So you're going to be having a good strength score. You grapple them. You can drag someone while they're grappled. Drag them over to a cliff, to a hole, anywhere you really want to. And then when you get extra to attack at 5th level, you release them, which is a free action for a good grapple. Then take your attack roll, hit them, and then force them to make their save and fall off the cliff. Now, it does say you can move into their space, but you don't have to. So if you don't want to be right next to the hole that you just dropped the bad guy in, then you don't need to. But this can be super effective if you take liberal use of your grapple abilities in addition to it. So I really like that aspect. And it really does give you the idea of a very kind of controlling, dominant barbarian, where if you're not where they will want you to be, they will pick you up and put you where they will want you to be. So I like that. The second thing you get at the 3rd level is called Stance of the Mountain, which effectively means you cannot be knocked prone while raging unless you become unconscious. So the prone condition can be devastating for barbarians for a number of reasons. One of which is as they get more and more speed, being prone, in order to stand up, you have to use half your movement. So as you get more and more speed, it costs more and more movement for you to stand up. The advantage that characters get against you if you're prone doesn't mean a ton to barbarians, because with their reckless attack, a lot of times they're already granting advantage to attack rolls. It can make the difference when they're ranged attackers, though, because if you're prone, normally a ranged attacker would have disadvantage on the shot, but if the barbarian is used with reckless attack, it's just a flat roll. So the fact that they can't be knocked prone is useful. I don't think it's anywhere near as useful as the Thundering Blows, but it's also the secondary effect of a third level ability. So, I'm not too upset that it's not the most useful thing in the world. Still useful, don't get me wrong. As we move up to 6th level, you get what's called the Demolishing Might, which is interesting to say the least. Effectively, all your melee attacks gain the Siege property, which the Siege property means your attacks deal double damage to objects and structures. Which isn't something a ton of the D&D campaigns deal with on a regular basis. Generally, the only time I've seen it used a lot is if you're like breaking down doors instead of picking them or just opening them. You might use the hit points of the door. Generally, the doors are only going to have like 10 hit points. So the fact that they can do double damage against them isn't that big a deal. One thing I have done playing a barbarian in the Adventures League, we were playing an adventure where we're in a tavern and a fire breaks out. And the goal for that part of the adventure is not only to get out of the tavern, but to save as many people from the blaze as possible. Well, it's a big tavern. It was packed because there was an event there. There's only one door out. So everyone is trying to find alternate ways to get people out. They're breaking windows and helping people out with windows, and they're trying to get people to orderly file out so they go out quicker. I go to the guy that checked the weapons at the door because I tipped him like 2 gold to check my great axe, which I named Lucille. And I go, I go to the guy and I go, "Give me Lucille." Because this character was an homage to Grog. And he gives me a great axe, and I go, "I would like to rage, and I would like to make my own door." And the DM goes, "What?" I said, I wanna take my great axe, and I want to chop through the closest wall to the outside. And he goes, "What?" I said, "Yeah, I want to make my own door. Can I do that?" He's like, "Yeah, make it into the attack roll." And I did, and I blew open a new door, and we saved everyone because of my door. By the way, the character's name was Korn, but it's spelled with a K, not like a C. So it's like a food, like you eat, but with a K. He was so much fun to play. So yeah, I made my own door. With this ability, this Demolishing Might, you can make your own door in various situations. Most adventures are not going to have like hit points for walls listed. I think maybe the Dungeon Master's guide does have guidance on giving hit points to inanimate objects like walls and things like that. But with this particular barbarian, and it really does feel like that idea of the Juggernaut. Like they're going to go where they want to go, and you're not going to stop them. Oh, there's a wall in the way? No, there isn't. I'm going to go through the wall. Playing this barbarian, you can really mess with enemy plans by simply creating entrances where there aren't, to places where they have control. So I really, as much as it doesn't seem like the ability to damage structures a lot is that useful, it is. Now, there's more to this ability. Your melee attacks against creatures of the construct type deal an additional 1d8 weapon damage. That's really big. A lot of people don't think of constructs too often, mostly because your kind of traditional D&D monsters aren't constructs. But there's a ton of construct enemies. All golems are considered constructs. Things like living armor, animated weapons and items, all of those are considered constructs. All of those, this barbarian will get additional damage against. And with reckless attack, because they're rolling advantage in all their rolls, they're going to crit that much more often, just because they have the ability to roll more and take the higher roll. Because it's adding a damage die instead of a flat number, if you could crit, you will double the damage die as well. So they can become really, really powerful against creatures that constructs are unique in the fact, which I believe they are the only monster to type that sometimes has this stun resistance. Stun is effectively a monk ability. It's something that monks are the only class that can stun innately, and that was done on purpose. I can't remember who said it. They actually interviewed about this stun condition. It might have been a Sage advice, where people asked about, is there a reason that there aren't many creatures that are resistant to stun? Yes, it's because that's part of the monk kit. That's the way you get the monk to play the way it's supposed to, is by stunning on a regular basis. Constructs are the only creature type that will actually have stun resistance sometimes. Not all constructs have it, but they're the only creature type that it'll actually show up on. So a Juggernaut Barbarian will be a really, really nice support for any kind of monk, because if it gets to a creature that the monk can't stun, then the Juggernaut can just go in, demolish it, and the monk can go focus on other things. So super useful. As much as it sounds limited, it's not. It encourages you to play the Barbarian differently, and to look at situations differently than you normally would. 10th level, you get what's called Overwhelming Cleave. When you make a weapon attack while raging, you can make another attack as a bonus action with the same weapon against a different creature that is within 5 feet of the original target and within range of your weapon. So that sounds a lot more complicated than it actually is. And this is basically a 5th edition version of a feat from 3rd edition. 3rd edition feats were massive. That's where they first were introduced, and they were a defining feature of this system, and they got complicated. One of the feats you could get, which was a mainstay for barbarians and fighters, what was called Cleave. Cleave basically meant if you killed an enemy or brought it to 0 hit points, with your attack, you could immediately make another attack to a creature within range. Barbarians were and fighters were really well known for they'd wander into a group of like kobolds or something with relatively low hit points. And because they would do a lot of damage with a single attack, what they would do is they'd go in and they'd kill a creature, and then they'd go and cleave another. And if they got what was called improved cleave, with Cleave, you could only do that once. With Improved Cleave, you kept cleaving until you ran out of targets or you didn't kill someone. So you would see fighters and barbarians. Barbarians a little more often than fighters because they just got that much more damage in single hits. The barbarian would go in and just cleave through like 4 or 5 kobolds or goblins or something like that and do massive stuff. That is effectively what this is. But they don't require you to down a creature, making it actually more useful. It does mean that there are dual wielding barbarian builds, and there are barbarian builds that use a shield. to just make them a little bit harder to hit. This particular thing, because it uses your bonus action, really favors a two-handed barbarian build. Because if you're using something like a great axe where you get a D12 of damage, being able to use a bonus action to get another D12 of the damage, unlike with dual wielding, you're generally only going to get an extra D6 of the damage, or a D8 if you take the dual wielding field and are wielding something like a longsword. Being able to do an additional like D12 or 2D6 if you're using a greatsword of the damage is pretty massive. And again, I talk about action economy so much because it's such an important part of 5th edition. Anytime you can give more actions to the team, you are getting an advantage for your team. This is ensuring that as long as the barbarian is getting 2 creatures together, which again, when you combine that with Thunderous Blows and Grapples, it's not that hard to go grab someone, yank him over by his ally, hit him, maybe knock him away and move into a square, then turn and hit his buddy, and then just go to town. So this is giving the barbarian more actions, more really useful actions, especially when you start factoring in feats like Great Weapon Fighter, where because the barbarian gets reckless attack, a lot of them take Great Weapon Fighter, because the way it works, you take a -5 to your attack roll, and if you still hit, you do +10 damage on that attack. Well, when you're rolling with advantage, and you're making attack rolls based on strength, which you've already probably maxed out at this point, you're really rarely going to miss as a barbarian. So a lot of barbarians are just constantly Great Weapon Fighter doing massive amounts of damage. This gives you another attack that you can do that on. That's a big deal. You're going to be just rolling into damage with this. Finally, the 14th level of ability is called Unstoppable. And this one's a little bit... This is worded a little confusingly, so I'm actually going to read the whole thing. Starting from the 14th level, you can become unstoppable when you rage. If you do so, for the duration of the rage, your speed cannot be reduced, and you are immune to the frightened, paralyzed, and stunned conditioned. If you are frightened, paralyzed, or stunned, you can still take your bonus action to enter your rage and suspend the effect for the duration of the rage. When your rage ends, you suffer 1 level of exhaustion. So what this means, it doesn't say it in here, but I'm assuming they mean as a free action or no action required, you can just decide to become unstoppable, which gives you all those benefits. Losing your speed as a barbarian can be a death sentence. There aren't really ranged barbarian builds, because most ranged attacks require dexterity, and the few ranged weapons you can get that use strength, like throwing axes, javelins, things like that, they don't do a ton of damage, and you generally are not going to your extra damage from your rage only applies to melee attacks made with strength-based weapons, not ranged. So being a ranged barbarian just doesn't really fit. So a barbarian losing their speed for whatever reason, a creature grapples them, they get caught in a trap, they get knocked prone. All of those things can be really bad for a barbarian. That's one of the reasons they get that extra speed, is because they're almost useless at range. The ability to not be able to lose yours as a speed and avoid some of the worst conditions you can get. Things like the paralyzed condition. Paralyzed is really bad. Any melee attacks made within 5 feet auto crit if they hit you, and they have advantage against you. So even with the Barbarian's rage reducing the damage, when you're getting crit off of every attack, and a lot of monsters are going to have things like multi-attack and stuff like that to just do tons of damage. Yeah, you're going to be in a world of hurt, even with your massive amounts of hit points and all that. So the ability to not be affected by paralysis, the stun condition, and the only thing you have to do is use your bonus action and then eventually take a level of exhaust. It's worth it. And again, this really fits into that idea of the Juggernaut, where they're going to go where they want to. No door, I'll make one. Enemy in my way, I will move them. Enemy not where I want them to be, they will move for me. And now, oh, you're trying to slow me down? Not a chance. Yeah. Again, the nice thing about this is not an every time you rage thing. This is the thing, and that was the thing that confused me, because it didn't say what kind of action it was to become unstoppable. I thought this just permanently changed your rages. I'm like, that's bad. Every time they rage, they get a level of exhaustion. That's super bad. But it's not. It's just whenever it's useful. So there will be a lot of combats where you're not really dealing with enemies that are slowing you down or paralyzing you or anything like that. But in the situations where you need it, you need it. Yeah. Final thoughts on this particular subclass. I like it, and I think the thing I like the most about it is a combination of Demolishing Might and the Thunderous Blows, the third and sixth level of abilities, because it lets you play a Barbarian in a unique way. A Juggernaut Barbarian is going to play differently than a Berserker, than a Totem Barbarian, simply because they can make their own. They can make their own doors, and they can move enemies around. And I like that. I like the fact that this Barbarian, in addition to being able to do crazy amounts of damage, like a Barbarian is supposed to, you can play this Barbarian a lot more tactically than most Barbarians, which a lot of more inexperienced players will pick either fighter or barbarian, simply because there's not a ton of choices you make, especially low-level barbarians. Your big choices are, do I want to use one of my rages for this combat, and who do I kill next? This allows you to go, okay, you still have to choose, who do I want to kill? Do I want to use a rage? But you also get to go, okay, where is it going to be most advantageous for us to have these enemies? Do I need to set up a fireball formation kind of thing, which will be easier for me to avoid because of my danger sense? Do I want to block an entrance with the enemy? Do I want to start throwing enemies off cliffs or off roofs or things like that? Do I want to slam them into walls? What do I want to do to control this battlefield a little more? And that's not something I've seen in other barbarian builds often. So yeah, really love that. So as always, if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. It helps me, it helps the channel, and it just makes you feel good. Seeing that little thumbs up show up and glow blue, it makes you feel special. And I want you to feel special by making me feel special. In addition, if you really like this stuff, hit that subscribe button. I try to put out at least 2 videos a week. This week, I'm doing the 3 videos, and Tasha's comes out in a couple weeks. Once it comes out, there will be a lot of videos coming out because it's a major expansion to 5th edition rules. Also, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of my videos. In the comments below, what is your favorite Juggernaut? I'm thinking of a very particular Juggernaut that's owned by a certain comic company. This, if I was doing play your faves, I could totally use Path of the Juggernaut to make Juggernaut. Like, it would not be difficult whatsoever. The only thing I would probably add would give him to the Tavern Brawler so that he could attack using his fists. Because that's what Juggernaut does. But Tavern Brawler and probably the Grappler feats, and then Path of Juggernaut, and this is Juggernaut. Really like that. So in the comments below, what kind of cool builds do you think you could make using a Juggernaut? Anyway, that's all for me today, and I will see you guys next time. All right, bye bye.